Hi, my name is Jamie. I live in Egypt and I have a makeup collection that just keeps getting larger, except it hasn't really in a while, but let's talk about it anyway. So today what we're going to be talking about is I have finally sat down. I have counted up all of the times I have used each palette. This is a little project that I have been insanely working on like an insane person since January, so that I know just exactly how many times I use each palette in the year. So then that is going to, in theory, inform my decluttering habits and also kind of my spending habits, and I'll just see what I like, you know? So without further ado, I'm going to be showing you my top 10 most used palettes in the last 6 months. There will be maybe some surprises, maybe not, I'm not sure, probably not really if you've been watching for a while, but yeah, let's get into it. If you're new here, hi. Please feel free to subscribe. I have a large makeup collection. I talk about color, palettes, indie brands, makeup in general, a little bit of like expatty stuff, lots of full faces of makeup, but that should slow down here in the next little bit because guess what? I am not buying that much makeup lately because it is a pain to ship to Egypt. So the first palette that I wanted to start with is actually, it was a toss-up between this one and the Beauty Bay Neutral 42 palette, but this is obviously more interesting to talk about, and that is the Muse palette, and this is from Cosmic Brushes. I believe it is still in stock right now. Cosmic Brushes is a British indie brand that has some very affordable, very nice quality palettes. And this is definitely a really good palette to have. I think it bridges the gap between, for instance, like maybe there's more spring looks in here, but I think you could probably use it for fall as well. And obviously, like, I'm not a big pink girl, so that's not really why I got this palette, but it is a good companion to the Serenity palette. This is a really pretty like pink to gold. Again, not even that I really like that color, but it's pretty, you know? This color Ambient is really lovely as well. It's kind of a, I don't know, almost a mulberry to a bit of a green. There's some green flecks in there. In terms of like an actual for real Z duochrome, this shade Luster is in fact a duochrome. It's a very white to pink. And yeah, this is gorgeous. I wore this the other day. It was probably a little too loud and proud for work, but who cares? I don't. Do you? So my third graders have asked me, like, why do you wear so much makeup? And I'm like, because I like it. And you just know that their mothers are talking about it. They're like, oh my God, she wears so much makeup. Yes, I do. I do. What else do you want? Next up, I actually wore this the other day as well. This is the NYX Ultimate Utopia palette, and this is a very good everyday palette that also has a lot of color in it, and it is very much like fall vibes. I really like this palette. I think it's still somewhat available for purchase. I'm not sure though, I haven't checked. But I have used this palette 7 times. As well, I used the Muse palette 7 times. And I don't have any other palettes from NYX. They don't really interest me, but this quality and formula is fine. I think that the formula is a little bit better in their bigger palettes. There are some things and some palettes that I wouldn't exactly trust from NYX, but so far this palette has worked really, really well. It's not like it has any special shades or anything. It's a very standard matte shimmer palette. You know, I haven't even really looked at it. There's definitely more mattes than shimmers in this palette, but I really like it. It's been really good to me. I will continue to wear it. It was a solid investment. I'm not happy, or I'm not upset about it. I'm not upset about that palette. It was a good palette. It's a good purchase. Like I said, I wore it the other day. There's a lot of options to be had with it. Okay, so this is another work staple of mine. This is the ABH Nouveau palette, and it is really, really a nice quality palette. Kind of some orange to greens. It came out a couple years ago. I believe it's still available. I do really like this pop of purple. And yeah, I mean, I don't really have any more to say about it other than it is definitely like a standard work palette for me. It does have a lot of fallout. ABH is kind of known for that. It is very soft. And ABH came out with a couple new palettes recently that I would like to try. But, you know, I like the bronziness. I like the greens. I like pretty much everything about this palette. It's neutral enough for me to wear to work and not look like a crazy person. So there's that. But yeah, I like that ABH is doing kind of this new standard size, and I saw that they recently came out with minis of the Modern Renaissance and the Sultry palette. I don't know, I'm into it, but I don't need those palettes. I am going to continue to selectively purchase ABH, but this palette functions really, really well within my collection. I'm glad to have it, and yeah, if there's something I like from ABH, I'll buy it. I should also mention I wore that palette 7 times in the last 6 months, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you have lots of palettes, it is kind of a lot. All right, next up is Glaminatrix Nocturnal. I also have worn this in the last couple of weeks. This is a little bit of a difficult palette for me to wear just because it is very bright, and I don't feel like these colors necessarily can go together. Like obviously this color can go together, this color can go together, etc. But when you're trying to create a look with this palette, it's a little bit tricky. Not to say that I don't do it, not to say that I don't like the palette, it's just a little bit difficult for me to conceptualize, and I think that that's kind of where I'm at with things. I like the formula from Glaminatrix. It's not that I don't, I just feel like there is a little bit better within my collection. I have worn this palette now 7 times in the last 6 months, and I'm happy to have it. So far, so good. I like the duochromes, but they're not exactly my favorite. I feel like there's better in my collection, and I'm going to continue to talk about that. Okay, so another palette that I have worn 7 times in the last 6 months is the Adept New Light from Adept Cosmetics, Adept Cosmetics. And you've heard me go on about this palette. This is really, really beautiful, and Heather is probably one of my favorite shades ever. Adept discontinued this particular palette, and Adept has been doing a lot. They've been doing the most lately. They've been doing a lot of things. I like everything from Adept, but I'm not certain about the formula. I'm not sure that it works that well on my eye. Unfortunately, just because they do produce really beautiful palettes, and I'm not sure that I love the formula. I do absolutely adore this palette, however. You couldn't pry this out of my cold, dead hands. It's one of my favorites. And I just kind of wish that it had a bit of a different quality of it, so I haven't tried the most recent Adept palettes. I do see that they re-released the Heather Austin palette recently, so if you did not manage to pick that one up, now is a good time. I wonder if they reformulated. This palette isn't quite as bad about like lifting off my eye or creasing, but that Heather Austin palette creases on me so bad, so bad. But will I buy more Adept Cosmetics? Yeah, absolutely. Just, I've got to pick the right thing. The Sumerian Sunset palette looks like it's a good one for me, but I'm not going to be able to get it anytime soon, so I'm going to wait, and it's also kind of expensive. And there's just kind of like other things that I like a little bit better, but you know, I'll still buy Adept. It'll happen one day. So moving into palettes that I've worn a little bit more, I have worn this palette 8 times this year, and that is the Interstellar palette from Be Perfect, and it is really, 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 really beautiful. I got it within the last year, and I've kind of stayed more on this side, I would imagine. Less in the pinks, more over here into even like the blues and the greens and the grays. I think it's a stunning palette. I really enjoy having it and think it's really beautiful. I will say that I wish I had reached into it a bit more, and it does have some special shades, and it has some special shades, but not like the most special. I definitely have other like duochromes or multichromes in my collection. But whenever I am thinking about doing a big bold look, I automatically factor in Be Perfect as one of those brands that I can rely on if I'm doing a really big look, because their eyeshadows are so consistent, especially in the like collaboration palettes with Stacey Marie. So I love this palette. I would never get rid of this palette. It's one of my absolute favorites, and it's gorgeous, and I just get it out to look at it sometimes, you know? Okay, this may come as a surprise to you because historically, I do not like small palettes. I'm a size queen when it comes to palettes. Like a big one, I don't mind looking at. If it's too big, you know, oh, we're going into bad territory here. But anyway, this should surprise you. And this is the Makeup by Yolando Exchange Mini Palette, and it is a 5-pan palette, and I wish this was still available. This is stunning. Beautiful. These colors all work together so beautifully. It's gross. Like it's an amazing palette. I wish I had more room. I'm gonna swatch it for you because unfortunately it's not available, but it is So lovely. The mattes are so freaking good. There's a duochrome in here that is spectacular. And the whole thing just works together. It just works out so well, and I love this red. And you know me, I'm not a red girl. I'm not a red girl, I'm not a pink girl. I don't wear these colors, but this is just enough for me to be totally hooked. So ignore everything up here, but just from here. This is spectacular, and I'm sorry if my swatches suck, but I absolutely love this palette. This is easily one of my favorite palettes in my collection, and I did not expect it at all. So keep your eye, I've mentioned this before, keep your eye on Makeup by Yolando. They make a good duochrome, they make a good matte. Just keep your eye on it, on the brand, for a palette that really speaks to you. I've worn this palette now 8 times total in the last 6 months, and I didn't get it that long ago. I got it like before I moved, but not long before I moved. So it's not been in my collection for very long, technically. Okay, this is no surprise to you. I'm gonna rank it a little lower because I think there are things that I like a little bit better, but I have worn my custom Lethal Cosmetics palette 10 times. I mean, I built it for myself, so how could I not wear it that much? And I chose this specifically to have a lot of duochromes, a couple of multi-chromes. I like other palettes from Lethal. They really picked up their quality, I think, in the last couple of years. I have the Evergreen palette. I have the Wildflower. I don't remember that spring palette that's really beautiful, and it is really beautiful. That quality is so much different than other palettes that they've come out with in the past, but this I really, really like, and again, I made this for me specifically, so it's a color story I really respond to. I do have a video on this if you're at all interested. If you're not, I understand, because it's singles, but I have some thoughts on singles. So I've worn that palette 10 times in the last year. Similarly, I have also worn this palette 10 times in the last year. And this is my custom Give Me Glow palette, and I have some other singles. This is a recent addition. Originally, I just had these. This is the shade Salem, and it is a deep eggplant purple. But this is, again, kind of a case for building your own palette, for sure. There's other things that I think I could put in there. I have some other singles that I could sub this one out with. But in general, I love the quality of Give Me Glow. Now, this looks really muted. This doesn't... Really? Shut up. So just looking at it here, this doesn't do it justice. So this is like Gifts Galore, and this is like a very silver green. All of the Give Me Glow shimmers are really, really incredible, and like this is Xenon, for example. Look at that. It's kind of like a blue periwinkle in the pan, and then it looks like, you know, that. I don't know if that's even like adequate in how it's coming off. It's almost like, can you see that? It's a blue, green, purple. It's incredible. So recently, Give Me Glow had a sale on all of their singles. They're changing pan sizes. I don't know that there's anything left at this point. This is Electric Unicorn. Again, this is a spectacular shade that is really, really beautiful on the eyes. It's kind of like a yellow to green. But in any case, yeah, I have really enjoyed Give Me Glow quality. I'm super into the brand. I'm interested to see what they'll do next. As you know, I talked about a few palettes recently that weren't quite up my alley, but they could be. And you know, we'll see. I'm curious to see what they're going to be doing about their single shadows in the future. But regardless, I think that with this information, building your own palette of singles from brands you really trust is kind of a good way to go if you're like me and you have a big collection and, you know, sometimes you're just looking for that magic bullet, that sweet spot. Maybe building up a collection of singles, although not as popular, is a solid way to have things that you're going to use every single day. I could wear these every single day. And not that I would do this, but if I had to get rid of everything and just keep these two, I would do that. Not that I'm going to, but I would do that. So last up is, of course, you know this, my favorite palette. It is Manifest Dream Big from Be Perfect. And this is an old palette. I use it all the time. It has been used now 11 times in the last 6 months, which again, with a big collection like mine, or at least like a normal person big collection like mine, this is a lot of times to use a palette. And again, it's turning out to be similar to what it was last year. I used this palette 22 times last year and I have 100 something palettes. So it is definitely a keeper within my collection. It is no longer available, unfortunately, but you know, sometimes it's good to look back. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this short video and I finally finished it. And yeah, I'm gonna be keeping track of everything that I use again for the next 6 months, and we'll see what we come up with because yeah, things can change. I don't know what I'm gonna be purchasing. I don't know what I'm going to take a particular shine to. We'll see if any of the spots shift, and thanks for watching. I hope you have a good day and let me know what you're buying.